Hey, good evening, everybody. Todd Stiles, Jackson District Ranger with the Bridger-Teton National Forest. So obviously, folks know we've got 2 national forests involved in this fire, and it's pretty common in this country along the Continental Divide and the southern Absarokas and the Mount Leyte Highlands that the fires will move southwest to northeast with the prevailing winds. So unfortunately for the Shoshone, a lot of times that means they're the beneficiary of something that starts on the Bridger-Teton. And part of what I wanted to show you here is the lightning map from September 15th was the origin of the Pack Trail fire. We've had an awful lot of lightning this year, but just in context for right around that time frame, this is what the lightning map looked like. And that was down there kind of right in this area was kind of the origin, and what those orangish kind of red colors are the old fire history. And so you can kind of see how a lot of times they have that kind of southwest to northeast trajectory to them. And so when you look at those numbers, 38 fires total in a little bit more than a month's time, and then there were 19 in about a 2-week period around the start of the Pack Trail. So an awful lot of successful suppression of a lot of those fires, but these ones like the Fish Creek and the Pack Trail, obviously for good reason, get a lot of attention because they escape a lot of that initial attack, and then they become big problematic fires like they are. And so, nationally on that kind of day, just to give you a sense, when we say resources, that could be people, engines. There were over 27,000 assigned in mid-September, and that's pretty darn late into the year for the fire season to be that busy. And where it says national PL5, that's just our preparedness level. So that basically means at a national level, we're kind of at like a drawdown, and everybody's out. So if you get starts, you're not necessarily going to get a ton of resources coming your way. So you really got to put people where there's values at risk and where your firefighters have a high chance of success. And so there were 504 over those about 6 days that week of mid-September. And I wanted to include this slide. This was, I think, a couple weekends ago, I flew over the fire. And I want to say this is up in kind of the headwaters of North Fork Spread Creek. So this one would be on the Fish Creek fire. But this really gives you a sense of some of the mortality up there and the volume of snags out there. We've been hit by, 2 predominant things, right? In the case of the whitebark pine and the lodgepole pine, we've been hit by the mountain pine beetle, and the white pine blister rust has affected the whitebark pine. So the mortality's been really high. And then the other thing that's really gotten us on both sides of the Continental Divide about the last 6 to 8 years has been the spruce beetle. And that's a lot of that Engelmann spruce has died. And so think about that scene there in front of you and kind of when you get a fire in there, where you're going to be able to respond to it. It's a very real deal for firefighter safety, for us to be able to get people in the right spots. And this is, so we live in the Northern Rockies, right? And we've got lodgepole pine, subalpine fir, whitebark pine, Engelmann spruce in our mixed conifer. And it burns really hot when it burns, and a lot of times you have to pick it up in areas where either the vegetation changes in our meadows and our creek bottoms and our riparian areas, or in rock, in order to kind of safely address that. So this just gives you a sense. This was up kind of near Tripod Peak, up on the Fish Creek fire, and this is pretty darn common out there. And a lot of these fire types would burn with no kind of intervention from people, right? They often don't burn. It might take 100 or 150 years for a fire return interval. So they do burn big and hot when they go. So that's kind of our fuel type. This was on Fish Creek in the North Fork, kind of in the Beauty Park area, if you're familiar, if you were to go up the Moxon Basin Road and come down there. And kind of what I was showing here is 2 things. One, fires don't affect every acre equally on every acre, right? They can be really severe, or they can be of real mixed severity. And this is a really good example of some mixed severity. And kind of part of that is because you've got you've got grass and sage and aspen stands and stuff like that that break up the fuel continuity. And a lot of times when the conditions aren't terribly severe, the fires will kind of stop along those edges. And a lot of times those are the areas that it makes sense to try to pick them up, because the firefighters aren't in those snags and they have a lot more success working in some of those areas. This is another spot. This is, I think, the headwaters of the South Fork of Spread Creek, Dry Lake Creek up in the Grouse Mountain country on the Black Rock Ranger District. And so, you know, when you see these big, beautiful riparian areas like that, see what that fire did is it spotted over onto that mountain, and then it came down and it stopped down in that riparian area. And for a lot of the Fish Creek, this is what's changing now. We'll get to this in the next picture or two. But this was serving us very well all throughout the month of August and into early September. Basically, this fire, when it hit these features, it would check itself up, and we had a lot easier time dealing with it. Just one more shot. This is kind of up in the Beauty Park, Tripod Peak. That's Tripod Peak to the right, and the origin was kind of up in that area for Fish Creek. But a little bit more of that mixed severity. This area burned a little bit more completely, but you can see there's still some stringers and stuff that did not. But look how it just kind of checked itself up in the sage grass willow. Okay, and then this was up near the origin of the Pack Trail fire, and this was when it was really getting going. And so you can kind of see some of that nasty steep terrain up there and a lot of that snag component in it. Okay, and so that was kind of Pack Trail really taking off there. This would be looking south, and that's like Fireweed Creek and Game Warden Creek. And those little tents there in the bottom is an outfitter camp that we had some apparatus and some pumps on to try to protect that camp. No one was in there because that was in the closure area, and that camp's actually fared okay, but it did come across this. But to kind of give you a sense of a little bit earlier on, this kind of feature would have been exactly the kind of feature we'd try to pick a fire up on, and it was pretty darn effective early on. But what's really changed right now is all the fuels come available, so the sage, the grass, and we even literally had willows burning and the Purdy Scar to the south of this Pack Trail. So just things really came to life, and now we're at what's called the 97 percentile energy release component, and that's just a fancy way of saying that a fire can get big in a hurry. And oddly, it's more like conditions of mid-August now. So we're not very used to this in early October. Yeah, and then this is, of course, the Wind River Corridor. So this was Sunday when it really pushed, I think it was about 10 or 11,000 acres it pushed that day with red flag winds and everything, and it's kind of hung up on the ridge. But I basically just show this. This is the last picture I had, and I know it's a bit of an ominous one, but the point that I was really trying to show with this, you guys, is just a lot of empathy for you for the fatigue we kind of all got going right now. We're believe me, we're feeling it too. The Fish Creek started back on the 16th of August, and we had a couple lulls there with weather and everything, but then wow, things really kind of came back to life in September. So we're in it, and I don't know what to say other than I'm just really appreciative we were able to get California Team 10 here to help us. We really needed them for our community, so I'm just thankful they're here. And thanks so much, everybody.
Hi, I'm Jeff VonKienast, the District Ranger here in Du Bois, Wind River Ranger District, and the Shoshone AA. So when we get these campaign fires, these large project fires, we look at our critical values at risk, and the number one critical value at risk is always firefighter and public safety. So that's the number one thing we're looking at. And so one thing that I want to hit on, where Todd mentioned a few things, is that we have a confine and point protection strategy here. And what that means is we're trying to catch this fire where we can catch it without essentially killing our firefighters. The bottom line is we've got this issue with snags throughout both of the forests. And you folks are mountain people, you understand what snags are about and how, how dangerous they are. We unfortunately lose firefighters to snags almost every year. So the biggest thing that we're concerned about, number one, is firefighters and also the public safety. So Todd talked a little bit about, how we were catching them and how now all of a sudden where we were catching stuff and where we could engage these fires were meadows and sagebrush all the way up until we got this frost, which made even those available. And then when you put wind behind it, it just makes it that much more difficult. And you guys saw that on Sunday. So outside of the firefighters, the next thing we look at is, is also along with that is public safety. And to do that, we generally have to put in closure areas. And this is a copy of our closure area. You can see the two fires there in the purple. And so we know it's a huge disruption to folks. I mean, we've had to ask our cattlemen to move their cattle out early. We've lost some timber sales, and we've closed a bunch of hunting areas. And we understand that. I'm a hunter, and it's really unfortunate that we have to do this. But understand that when we have an issue like we had on Sunday, and you see how fast that fire is moving, that we have to figure out how to get everybody out of there. And we can't really do it. I mean, the bottom line is we can't fly. So we got to try to do a sweep and try to find everybody. And especially when they're tucked in everywhere where they're hunting, we got to try to find these people and get them out of there so they don't burn up. Because a lot of these roads, you guys know, if you're locals, a lot of these roads are one-way roads. There's only one way out. And so we close the forest, and we have evacuations, and we have to do that ahead of time, and we have to do the best we can to keep people safe. And I know that it's a disruption, but that's just what we have to do. Next slide, please. So Todd talked about weather patterns, and he talked about how fires generally move from the Bridger Teton, if they get a start over there, to the northeast, and move on to the forest. So we've known this for quite a while. Our firefighters are well aware of it. And so what we have a plan in place is try to do fuels work all along that south end of the district, south of the Wind River. And and I have this map back here for later, but all of these folks are timber sales, either already in progress or in the purple. It's the next fuels project we have. And so when you look at this, so here's the Wind River corridor and people's homes right here. And so we've been looking all along here to try to these are all salvage sales essentially. And we are doing mostly snag removal in this, and then fuels work, and these were planned prescribed fires, this section here and this section up here. So we have a plan in place to continue to do our best to try to thin the forest and make a buffer between the town of DuBois and the Wind River corridor. And we're going to continue with this. I don't know how many sales there are here, probably 18 timber sales or more. I think we have 8 or 9 of them that are active right now. And so that is kind of the long-term plan, to continue to work these sales and try to thin the forest and thin these snags so that we can create buffers along the Wind River corridor and south of the highway and south of DuBois to try to slow these fires. You can see where the fire, so it doesn't always work. When you have a big wind day, you can see the fire, the pack trail fire, where it already burned up a bunch of our timber sales. And some of them burnt, basically they're a total loss. It's just black sticks out there. So, but we will continue to work through this and try to, make sure that we make a buffer for the town of DuBois. And that's what we're doing right now. And folks, we're in it for the long haul. We'll be here. The team's here. And we plan on sticking with this thing until the season-ending event. That's what we're going to do. We're going to stick with it until the season-ending event, and we're hoping that comes sooner than later.